The UK has arguably one of the most advanced electric power systems in the world, and probably the largest variability in programs and ancillary services, real-time trading, balancing mechanisms. All of that is up and operating here.
Hello and welcome to Energy Unplugged by Aurora. This podcast features various experts from Aurora having in-depth conversations with key industry leaders, policymakers and academics from all over the world. It explores the hottest topics across the energy market and gives a unique perspective on major energy issues.
Welcome to this episode of Aurora Energy Unplugged. I'm Oliver Kerr, US country lead at Aurora, and today I'm really excited to be speaking with my guest, CEO of Kiwi Power, Jay Zoellner. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Oliver. How are you?
Really good, thanks. How are you today?
Doing very well.
Now, Jay, your role at Kiwi Power is really the latest in a fairly long line of leadership roles that you've held over the years. You've done pretty much everything there is to do in the energy sector, as far as I can tell. Everything from running large businesses, small startups. You've worked on renewables, thermal storage, demand side response. You've done the hardware side of things, so actually building and operating assets, as well as your focus right now, which is more on the software side of things. I'd like to spend some time digging into bits and pieces of that. But first, you've recently moved from the US to the UK. And I've got to ask, what made you give up the sunny beaches of California for the grey skies of London?
Yeah, that's quite a shift, isn't it? So we have our place still in California, so that's all good. I guess haven't quite given it up, I would say, but we've definitely settled here in London and love it. It's a beautiful city. We've been able to enjoy it for basically the first 7 months before the lockdown. Maybe since then, I've become very aware of how narrow the homes are here, as opposed to California. So I'm in a townhome, and they're not nearly as wide or as spacious as in the States, but what a fabulous city this is, even in lockdown. We love it here.
You probably can't even see your neighbors back home in California. So.
Exactly. Yeah. But I must admit, I do miss the sea, because we were pretty close to the ocean there, but we'll get back there someday. So it's all great.
On the work, the work side of things, are there any surprising differences in workplace culture that you noticed?
Yeah. What I've found is, first of all, the British people here and here in London, quite welcoming to me to be here. I think when I first started here, I was the only American, so it was coming into quite a melting pot, frankly, of capabilities, backgrounds. It was fascinating. Everybody's very pleasant, very civil. I think the one thing that I had to adjust to a bit was I'm quite direct and can be a little bit too direct. And so I've learned to tone that down a bit, because it's not as valued of a commodity as it is in the States, perhaps.
It's interesting, isn't it? My fiance is American. I've spent a number of years in the US. And I think sometimes the fact that we speak the same language obscures some of these more subtle cultural differences that take a little bit of time to work out like that.
But I must say, I've learned to really value everybody with how they approach things. Their approach to problems is quite pleasant, and it's great. I really like the work culture here.
I'm curious about your journey to where you are now. You started out, at least by training, as a physicist. Is that sort of rigorous quantitative training a useful skill set that's come in handy over the years?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was going to switch about midway through to electrical engineering, but then decided not to, just because I loved physics so much. And, my degree is from the University of Idaho, so it's not like exactly MIT of physics. So what are you going to do with that? But I'm really glad I stuck with it, because I think it taught me that really no problem is too difficult to overcome, because when everything is about uncertainty and integrating out discontinuities in order to solve a
Hmm.
problem, it really provides a path for your mind to learn to solve problems as opposed to being put off by them.
I mean that's interesting, and there's certainly a lot of electrical engineers in the sector. So interesting that you went down a slightly different route. Um, you also spent some time in the U.S. Navy on nuclear submarines before moving into the power sector. Um, I mean, is that an experience that has influenced your approach to leadership in these various roles?
What a fantastic experience it was, and very important to
Mm,
my career, just from the standpoint of, first of all, teaching me all the engineering things that I didn't necessarily pick up when I'm studying physics.
mm,
But from a leadership standpoint, it's quite the crucible for learning how to get through problems, very difficult, life-threatening situations in some cases, and rely on everyone to do their part and still lead. But
mm,
yeah, I've got my gold dolphins. I was an officer, and there's nothing better than when you're on the surface, and that's the tower that you see when you're in the
mm,
sail. And when you're on the surface, it's just an incredible feeling, and the best. All
mm.
those other times, the months that you're under the ocean, prepared me for London, I suppose, and all the gray skies.
That sounds about right. That's probably a good segue into your current role, Jay. So you've moved to London just before the lockdown. Obviously, 2020 has been a challenging time in many respects. I mean, what's it been like taking the helm at such a difficult time?
Well, that's it has been quite interesting. So making the move here, I expected a lot of different things, but I did not expect to have to operate the business during such a global lockdown. It's amazing, and I really have to give all the congratulations to the Kiwi Power team.
Mm,
I mean, what an incredible job they have done managing through this change, not only in the business and all the change that we've been implementing there, but also, how they've had to do that in their own personal lives. And
mm,
we have not missed a beat in the business. And I know that that's entirely due to their commitment to our vision and our mission.
I mean, you say you've not missed a beat. I mean, I suspect when you came in, you had a certain vision for the direction you wanted to take things. And has COVID changed that? Has it sort of necessitated a bit of a shift in priorities?
I think it in fact it impacted the business perhaps a bit, just in terms of everybody was a little bit in the first maybe in the second quarter, in the first 6 months or so of the lockdown, people were quite reticent to maybe make some commitments to some capital projects that they were
Hmm.
doing, and so that impacted our business a little bit. But in terms of our ability to serve our customers, we were in the office one day and 100% remote working the next, and really not an impact to us at all.
I mean, similar story at Aurora, and like you said, it's amazing how resilient.
That's a great feeling, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for listeners who don't know, perhaps you could give us the 30-second elevator pitch for what Kiwi Power does and how you serve your clients.
Yeah, I think that's quite important, because we've definitely changed where we came from. First of all, the business is about 11 years old, I would
Hmm.
say, and we have a strong foundation in the DSR aggregation business here in the
Hmm.
UK. But I would say over the past couple of years, as that has become a much more uncertain uh, business model globally, really, that the companies started to make a good shift to another direction, which is relying much more and positioning ourselves much more as an energy technology company.
Mm-hmm.
So we really are the leading global energy technology company that delivers virtual power plant technology and expertise. And when I say we're the leading one, we're recognized by global research, independent research firms such as Guidehouse Insights and S&P Global Platts. We were winners and/or leaders in from both of those independent third-party researchers. And so I think because we started where we did, our customers have the confidence that we know what we're talking about, and we're building that expertise into the software.
And that's actually quite interesting. So, I mean, I think I'd always heard about Kiwi Power in the context of, an aggregator. It sounds like that's not quite the right way to think about you. I mean, I'm curious you mentioned some of the challenges facing the aggregation business. Would you mind elaborating on those a little bit?
Well, yeah, I think so I spent some time with Enernoc in the United States DSR aggregation business, and also here in the UK. And what we're seeing is that things are going far more, the ability to figure out what your revenues are going to be in the future is very difficult for an aggregator in today's business, because prices are dropping. They're becoming far more uncertain, and moving far more to a priced as cleared kind of mechanism, as opposed to a priced as bid. So that makes it quite difficult for aggregators to prove to their investors, here's what our business looks several years out. So what we've moved to is licensing the technology that we've developed over the past several years. Really moving it to a software as a service, as opposed to taking a fee for providing simple aggregation of different loads.
So with the technology, with the platform, are you still providing an optimization or a trading overlay? So you provide a route to market, and you help people dispatch their assets, play in different markets? Or is it really just you're providing the software to allow them to do that themselves?
Well, so it's different depending upon the market. Here in the UK, of course, we started out as an aggregator. So for our customers who wish us to continue providing that solution for them, we'll continue to do that. Outside of the UK, it's quite a different matter, though. We are because the Kiwi core software itself is a truly mixed asset software platform. We can leverage any particular asset, whether it's a small 3 kilowatt asset in somebody's residential home, or an 80 megawatt facility, generating facility, CCTG or something like that. It has that kind of variability, and we can put them basically into any market, whether it's a wholesale trading market or if it's a capacity market. What's important for us is to simplify the user's experience, or customer's experience, so that they can participate in all those markets with confidence and with simplicity. And then we believe that because of that, we will have the greater impact on global sustainability markets.
Is there a piece around transparency too? I mean, one thing I've always thought about the sort of the route to market providers is, you sign away your asset and let someone trade it for you, and you kind of rely on them to make the decisions. It sounds like with the software and the platform model, the decisions that are being made, but perhaps you're taking them yourself, or they're at least more transparent to the user.
They are much more transparent. First of all, our customers are able to keep 100% of the revenues and the program revenues for themselves. So the upside there may be a little bit of risk that goes with that too, but we also give them the visibility and the control to manage the availability of those assets to participate in whatever program they want it to participate in. So it's quite flexible. And because we're not in the middle, they have complete transparency. So it's quite a different model, and it's quite disruptive, we think, as opposed to anybody else who is doing that in the market today. It's really one of the reasons why I came to the UK. You asked that earlier. It's because the UK has arguably one of the most advanced electric power systems in the world, and probably the largest variability in programs and ancillary services, real-time trading, balancing mechanisms. All of that is up and operating here. And with FERC Order 2222 and 841 in the United States, I could see that because of the penetration of renewables in energy storage there, they're going to have to move to something more akin to what the UK is already doing. And what better way to do that than with a company? They've already got the technology, they've already got the expertise. We just need to show them a better way to access those markets and the customers.
Interesting. Yeah, I was reading this morning of my morning coffee an article you wrote for the Hill, where you were saying some of the same things. So that the UK offers a number of lessons for US markets. So does that explain your? I mean, you've just launched in the US. What's attractive about now as the right time to be entering that market?
Well, yeah, it's a good point. It's going to take the United States a few years, I think, to really figure it out and get it moving in the right direction. 2222 requires them to all the utilities to provide access to the wholesale markets, but there's going to be some reticence on the utilities to do that. How do they roll out a program to do it, et cetera? They can really look to the UK, I think, to figure out how to do that easily. And they can look to Kiwi Power about how to roll out a program, because that's really what our software does for them, quite simply. But I think it's going to be difficult for them just because there's so much, it's such, there's a lot of complexity, and it's distributed across, depending upon where you are, and it's quite complex. And so it's going to take a bit for them to work through that.
Presumably there are differences between ISOs as well in terms of, how far along they are with this stuff.
Yeah, they're quite different, actually. So there's 7 ISOs in the United States, I believe, if I remember right. Each one is quite different. ERCOT, for example, is the most open with real-time wholesale access for virtually pretty much anybody who wants it. Of course, you have to have the proper certifications, et cetera, which is why we teamed with NG North America in ERCOT to launch. They were our first client who's using our software to basically use and manage their customers. It's a real simple way for the customers to gain access to the wholesale market by teaming with NG North America, because they're using our software to enable it.
I'm sure there are some folks listening in ERCOT right now who will take umbrage at your description of the UK as the most advanced energy market in the world.
Perhaps, but I think when I say advanced, what I mean is if there's a program that you can envision, the UK has really addressed it, and I think it's one of the things that ERCOT is going to need to have to address is they don't have a capacity market there, and so there's some thinking that maybe they need to have some type of capacity market to address the issues that they may be facing. I mean, the growth that Texas is going through right now is just incredible. And so I think they may need to consider some modifications. And I guess I would argue you could look to the UK about how they're addressing flexibility, because the UK has done it quite well.
I mean, yeah, something like last time I looked, about 80 gigawatts of solar in the interconnection queue, 30 gigawatts of batteries. I mean, obviously not all of that gets built, far from it, but still, if even half that solar gets built, what that starts to do to prices in the middle of the day, and then, shifting the peak maybe is less in the middle of the day and more when, 6 p.m. the sun goes down, 100-degree day, air conditioning still on, and sort of what's ramping up to meet those peak prices.
And you've hit the nail on the head, Oliver. I think that we, Kiwi Power, we believe that the supply of the energy really isn't where the value is anymore. That is almost, it really isn't the issue. Where all the value is migrating to is in the flexibility. In other words, does the demand meet the supply, and does the supply meet the demand? And just because of those very problems, the rate of renewable penetration is quite amazing. Storage can really only address a certain part of that. And so we believe that it takes a truly mixed asset platform, someone like Kiwi Core, the Kiwi Core software, which can handle wind turbines, which can handle energy storage in front of the meter and behind the meter, which has PV associated with it, large CCTGs to small ground source heat pumps. We think that the ability to manage in that at a local level is really where the value is shifting to. Our software can help enable that for all kinds of customers, aggregators, ISOs, municipals, end use customers who want to do it themselves. It's quite a compelling offer.
I mean, it's interesting, the point around managing a system with high levels of renewables deployment. I mean, 2020 has been an interesting year in that regard too. I mean, we've had low demand, high renewables output. I mean, are there lessons that we've learned this year about the role of flexible energy in managing those sorts of systems?
Yeah, there was an incredible, you talk about kind of coming into this situation. So Kiwi Power has probably, I don't know, 400 megawatts or something like that here in the UK of demand side response, but we've also got generating capacity as well. But what was interesting is over the May bank holiday, demand falls off quite a bit anyway. But then you layer on top of that the lockdowns that we were going through in May as a result here. And at the same time, we were expecting quite a bit of heavy supply from wind in the north side. All the load is in the south side. And so there was quite the concern on the part of National Grid that they were going to be in quite a quite dramatic shift in an oversupply situation. So very quickly, they put together what they called the Operational Downward Flexibility Management Program, where they could pretty much unilaterally turn off supply. But of course, they don't want to do that. So they want to manage everything else as much as possible. So there's this immediate issue of how do we balance that imbalance? And Kiwi Power was the only provider, DSR aggregator software provider, who could qualify in the time required to participate in that program. And we performed quite well through all that. So it's just amazing the different challenges that ISOs and utilities are going to have to face with this new energy transition.
Yeah, and they're going to have to learn very quickly by all accounts. I mean, the UK is probably quite a good example. We've got huge targets for renewables deployment to reach the net zero target, which implies a huge need for low carbon flexibility. Do you think markets are delivering the right price signals to invest?
Yeah, it's a great question, Oliver. It's a really great question. I think the jury's still out on that. I think I don't know if you were speaking directly here about the UK, but let me just speak the way it is in the United States, because
Hmm.
that's where we've launched and we see a tremendous amount of growth there. I don't think it is right now. It's getting better. That's one thing where ERCOT can definitely take some uh, the banner as far as probably the best transparency on pricing. But I think there's a long way to go in all of that. And I think as the different grids figure out how do we manage through that, it's going to create imbalances and challenges for everybody to figure out how do we keep this in balance. And that's where software like Kiwi Core comes to play. It will help them get through that, because it will take a while to figure it out.
Mm. Yeah, I think that sounds about right. And I mean, it's interesting, right? So I mean, today at least it's relatively easy to keep the lights on when the wind dies down. It's not very sunny if you can ramp up your gas peakers. Good for longer sources of flexibility. I suppose in a net zero world in the 2040s, when we're in the middle of winter and it's not very windy, that becomes a lot harder. So what's going to pick up the slack?
Well, yeah, I mean, like here in the UK, I mean, there's all kinds of programs, right? There's wholesale access, there's capacity market, and there's frequency response programs, et cetera. And it's value shifts. I mean, the pricing shifts quite differently depending on the season and depending upon which program you're in. And you really have to have the ability to switch between those different programs to the extent that they allow you to switch.
Mm.
And if you cannot do that, then you're missing out on opportunity. And I think frankly that's where a lot of the world is going to be going. There's going to be different programs with different pricing, and you want to be able to make sure that you're taking advantage of those pricing opportunities.
Mm. I think that's quite a natural place to start to bring the conversation to a close. I'm going to end as we often do, and I'm going to throw out a few ideas or concepts and see or ask you if you think they're over or underrated. So first is the role of battery storage in the energy transition. Do you think that is overrated or underrated?
It's hard to say whether it's overrated or underrated, but I would say overall it's overrated, and primarily just because it has limits on it.
Mm-hmm.
The current technology is great, and we definitely need to get it out there. It's an important component, but I think there's an overemphasis on it, and I think it needs to be more targeted perhaps than it is.
Very interesting. The next is capacity markets as a way to keep the lights on.
Probably overrated. I don't know that they're important to keep the lights on. I think flexibility is more important, and a capacity market might be a means to do that. So I would say a capacity market is overrated as a way to keep the lights on. Yeah, I would say it's overrated.
And another sort of US-Europe comparison, nodal pricing, overrated or underrated?
I think it's an important aspect to understand where you're at and how to do it. So I think it's actually underrated. Yeah, I think it's underrated here in Europe. In America, it's quite standard. Yeah.
I think that's a great time to bring the conversation to a close. Jay, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I look forward to seeing what's next, both for you and for Kiwi Power. But for now, thanks very much, and hope to speak again soon.
Well, thank you, Oliver. And Aurora's a leader in thought knowledge in the energy space, so it's really important to us. So thank you so much.
That was Oliver Kerr, US country leader at Aurora, talking to Jay Zoellner, CEO at Kiwi Power. Do keep an eye on our podcast feed for more in-depth conversations with senior members of the energy industry. The best way to do this is to subscribe on whatever platform you use. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.